Hello there, and welcome to another Why You Lost. This one sent to me by Mr. Teffel? I don't know. He's playing as the Greenskins, facing some dwarfs, and both of these boys are fairly experienced players, so a higher level game this one. And for the most part, Tuffle knows why he lost, but we're going to have a look and see if there's anything he's missed. So playing as the Greenskins, facing the dwarves, not a terribly advantageous fight for either side. Greenskins, you got to bring some decent armor piercing, which he has done. He's got 3 units of Black Orcs, and these are of course great against dwarfs. They can beat up all of their infantry. You just have to protect them. They got to be careful of missiles and artillery where possible. Otherwise, they probably won't do a lot. But he's got 3 units of those, so lots of killing power. Also, 3 units of Orc boys up front. Now, you might not think to bring these because they're not armor piercing, but they are good damage dealers and can beat up some of the lower tier dwarfs and are just good for absorbing some of the damage. And Vanguard deployed at the back, the 8-peak loonies, unbreakable gobbos with some normal Night Goblin fanatics as well. They've got their armor-piercing fanatic attacks, so they're going to be nice for their sneaky flanking attack, disrupting missiles and whatnot. He's also got the mangy marauders, armor-piercing skirmish cav, always a good choice. And then 2 units of Savage Orc Arab boys. These are the only unit I might question in this army. The Rusty Arrows as well, these are good for their armor sundering, reducing all that hefty dwarf armor. So got a bit of a missile core going in, and that is most of the army. Just the Lord and Hero. He's got a Shaman with which spells? He's on a Boar as well, so he's got a bit of armor-piercing damage. He's got Foot of Gork, Here We Go, and Gaze of Mork. For the Lord, we've got good old Grom on his chariot with what items and abilities? He's got Lucky Banner, and the Greaten is Ear. So some damage-boosting abilities and a resistance for Grom himself. And then a couple of units I missed. 2 Squig units. Good old Squiggos with their armor-piercing. 2 units, whether they'll be able to do anything useful, we shall see. That's the entire Greenskins army. It's pretty large. That's kind of what you need against dwarfs when playing Greenskins. You might think to just bring tons of Black Orcs, but that makes your army pretty small and usually isn't a great idea. Some gyrocopters coming up. He's got miners blasting charges at the front. A bunch of Longbeard great weapons. I think there's 5 of these. So quite a lot of armor-piercing damage. He's ready for those Black Orcs. Also got some Quarrelers. So got some missile power. Dragonback Slayers at the back. Then Double Thane and Grombrindle as the Lord. So not going too heavy on the missiles or artillery. Playing it safe. He knows the Greenskins are going to rush him and not give him a lot of time to use range. So he's not going to rely on that too much. But one little trick the Greenskins could have pulled here to use up those blasting charges, because they're pretty much always on fire at will. If you bring Grom across, because he's on a chariot and he regenerates, you could bring him in front of all these blasting charges and waste at least 1 lot of their ammo without too much of a detriment to Grom, because most of them will probably miss, and if he does get hit, he'll just regenerate anyway. So that could be a good idea, just to waste those blasting charges. But he's brought the Orc boys, I think for this reason as well, to use up some of those blasting charges. They're taking them on the chin. This one taking a bit of damage as well, but he does reach those blasting charges. Going to stop them from using their blasting charges on the Black Orcs is the main goal there. Squigs coming around the flank. Night Goblins coming in. He's bringing in the multi-directional attack, which you really do need to do against the dwarfs. He has managed to get one of his Black Orc units into a fresh fight without them getting blasted by missiles or anything, so that's nice. Missiles coming in on the gyrocopters. But here comes the little goon party. Slayers, Double Thane, and Grombrindle all making a beeline for Grom, as he is sat here with the Black Orcs fighting these Longbeards. The Slayers, of course, dangerous for anti-large, but also because those Dragonback ones have a speed reduction. But it's not too big of a deal for Grom, as he is really quick. He's got out of there, no problem. People seen it coming. Here come the Night Goblins, going to get into those Quarrelers. Nice flank. Here come the Squigs as well. So he's doing everything right at this point. Got the missiles firing in. He's been using his magic with Gaze of Mork, firing at the gyrocopter. But Grom coming back in here, trying to get a little bit charging in. But this is a risky game, because that little goon party is still around, and they're still going to be on his case. Over here, we're engaged. Night Goblins are in there. 8-peak loonies going off. Black Orcs fighting their way through stuff. Missiles piling into the crowd. But here is Teffel's biggest mistake, which he is well aware of. He left his Lord here a little too long, and his Lord is going to get stuck. He really should get away here, because he's got basically no Slayers in front of him, but he can't get away. And he's slowed to only 47 speed, so he should be able to get away there really, but he's just kind of got stuck. And this is the risk since the big mass changes a few patches ago. Diving Lords in has become really risky, because it's so easy to get stuck now that even when it seems like you should get away, you can't, and then you get killed. And it's this kind of thing just happens a lot, so you have to be super cautious with your Lords now. Squig's getting a hold of some Quarrelers though, munching them down pretty damn well. So he's looking good so far. He's disrupting the missiles. He's got his armor piercing into all of the stuff. He has lost his Lord, though. Poor old Grom meeting his end, but he knows this. That was obviously a big mistake, but it was more just kind of a micro error, I think, that he couldn't quite get him out there quick enough. But it's not over. The favor bar is still slightly in his favor, so he's not lost it by any means, but he has certainly made life harder for himself. He's got one of these Thanes in the open, and shooting these boys can be one of the best ways to get rid of them, although armor-piercing missiles are obviously better. Still got those mangy Marauders, though, with their armor-piercing missiles. Black Orcs pretty beaten up here. Not sure what beat them up. Maybe it was the double Thane and Grombrindle. Slowly but surely winning this fight on the right. These Longbeards getting worn down, but he's still got Grombrindle and the two Thanes in good health. He's got to try and deal with that, because when that comes to late game, they're going to be difficult to stop. Like I say, focus firing these individual characters with missiles can be a good way to wear them down. Although the Dwarfs, of course, lots of armor, it can be tough to do. So now he's just kind of got to try and wear those things down. Wear down the characters, because he's mostly got the infantry beaten up. He could cycle charge these Squigs, because they do have a fair charge bonus, although now they've gone into Rampage, so he can't. But yeah, Squigs don't have much melee attack, only 26, but they do have a 36 charge bonus. So charging them around as much as possible is helpful, though them going into Rampage does make that difficult. Black Orcs coming in. Got to try and get on those Thanes and wear them down. He's got his missiles finishing off some of the stuff back here. Those Slayers, of course, very susceptible to missiles. He did also have a Foot of Gork earlier, which he kind of missed with. Other than that, his magic, I think he's using an Here We Go there, but he's been using it to shoot down those gyrocopters. Got some Black Orcs here being shot. I'm sure they get microed to action in a minute. But he's breaking the infantry nice. He's looking good at this point, still the favor bar in his favor, but wearing down these characters is just his problem. And this is pretty much how it goes on for the remainder of this. Later on, he does manage to break one of the Thanes, which does isolate him, and it would be the time to jump on him. He does come over with his Shaman, making it look like he's gonna jump into him, which I think he should have here. He should have gone for the attack. He's popped Deadly Onslaught, expecting the Shaman to come in, but he could cycle charge him and get out of there, so he's a bit safer. Generally, a Shaman doesn't want to go into melee with something like that, but he is armor piercing, so you can get a charge in, try and do some damage with that, and then get out of there, and that could at least wear him down. He has done some good damage to the other Thane, but Grombrindle is still in damn good health. Bringing in a magic spell. He's going to use a Gaze of Mork, which does hit the Thane, but also hits his Black Orcs, and I think probably does more damage to himself. He may have been better off charging his Shaman in and then popping Here We Go, so that all the Black Orcs can get some melee attack buffs as well as himself. Maybe that could have been a better choice, but even then, Grombrindle would have been hard to take down because he still has so much health left. Everything's breaking. He's got rid of the Thanes for the most part. It's just damn Grombrindle. Eventually it comes down to lone Grombrindle, who gets piled on by everything left that Tiefel has, but can't quite do it. He charges in the Shaman, but Grombrindle puts an end to him pretty quick. He's got him surrounded, he's got him low on health, but can't do it. Dwarf's too tough. This is a very common scene to have just a single Dwarf Lord left at the end, and they just wear everything down because you can't kill the bastards. Especially Grombrindle, because he's unbreakable, you do have to completely kill him off. And of course, if Grom was still alive at this point, he'd probably have an easy time finishing him off, because he would be able to cycle charge him, he would be able to hit him. Even though Grom isn't armor piercing, he'd still be able to get some damage done and keep leadership up as well. But a good game all the same, well played to both sides. A close one. Tiefel could have won it, even though he lost his Lord, I think, but it would have been tough. Although if he kept Grom alive, he probably would have won this one pretty comfortably, because he did play it pretty well other than the Lord. Grom, of course, not getting a lock done. Shaman doing some work. Did have the Here We Goes and the Gaze of Morks mostly, so that's fine. Orc boys, of course, just there for chaffy stuff. Some of the goblins doing pretty well for themselves. One of the Black Orcs doing well. The other one's okay-ish. Missiles putting up some damage. Not bad performance there. And the Squigs doing a little bit of work as well. So not a bad performance for his army overall. Grombrindle getting a lot of damage done there, of course. Bit of work from those blasting charges. The Longbeards didn't get too much done. He contained those pretty well. The Slayers doing some work and the missiles were contained. So, nice job overall. Tefl close to winning this one, but Zakanator able to take him down. Let's have a look at his build and see if there's anything we could change to maybe make this a little bit better for Darwi smashing. So this is Tefel's army as I believe he had it. It's a pretty good army overall. There isn't really too much to change. Let's have a look at what other options we maybe could have gone with. So for the Lord, we've got Grom. I think that's a fine pick against dwarves. He's hard to get a hold of. He doesn't have armor-piercing damage, but he does have some nice buffs to help both him and his units out. Degrate in his ear, that can be useful for himself and allies. And of course, Lucky Banner helps his damage resistance and his melee attack. So both nice items there. Perhaps missing a trick though, not taking the Axe of Grom, as it does increase armor piercing damage and has armor sundering, so thus very good for bringing down that dwarf armor, right? Language of the Boys, probably not greatly necessary here unless you're going to stick near your units so much, but for the most part, that's all fine. Grom's only issue is that he doesn't have that armor-piercing damage, so he can be slightly less effective, although he does have the bonus versus infantry. In this fight, other Lord options, this is probably one of the few fights where Grimgor can actually be useful, because he can actually outrun goon squads and things, and is a very good character killer, of course, but maybe not against two Thanes in Grombrindle, but if he could have got a one-on-one with any of them, he would have taken them out. Azag, another good choice, I think, on Skullmuncher. He's flying, he's armor-piercing, he's mobile. Could bring Soul Blight as well, the spell that reduces not only damage, but armor in an area, so that can be great against dwarves. Law of Death, though, not great against dwarves generally because of the magic spells, but yeah, just another option there. Orc Shaman, fine pick. Boar is useful, has the armor-piercing damage, helps keep it alive. He had evasion. I think he had evasion on it, which you could probably lose. You want the power of the War for the extra magic, but this one you could lose and maybe put a Chevron onto a Black Orc unit because he's going to outrun all the dwarf stuff anyway, so he doesn't really need that speed boost. Then he's got his 3 spells, Foot of Gork, Here We Go, and Gaze of Mork. These are all fine, I think. Foot of Gork can be a great one for taking elite units off the map or groups of dwarf units. Their high armor can be knocked down a peg or two with a nice Foot of Gork. Here We Go, always a useful spell to bring. It's basically a mini war for a little area, good for dropping on those Black Orcs, helping their damage output. Gaze of Mork, good for bringing along to either snipe characters, which is not great against because it's weak against armor, but mostly good for sniping at those gyrocopters, which is what he was doing with it. Orc Boys, like I said, not ideal generally because they don't have armor piercing, but they are good for beating up some of the lower tier stuff or absorbing some damage. Same with the Gobbo Fanatics, they do have their armor piercing fanatic attack though, and of course Black Orcs, perfect here against fighting the dwarves. The only thing I would question here, like I mentioned, is the Savage Orc Arrow Boys, purely because they don't have armor-piercing missiles. They're good if there was a lot of gyrocopters, but that's about it really. There's probably better things you could spend the money on, I would think. So I would lose those. He does have the Rusty Arrows. Those are good to bring because of that armor sundering, so I would bring them pretty much every time anyway. And the Mangy Marauders, so you do have some missiles, right? If there were some gyrocopters, in this case there was only one, those 2 units could have dealt with them. The 2 Squigs I find can be a little bit squishy and a little bit not really that great unless you bring a lot of them. They are armor piercing, they are anti-infantry, so a nice formula for dwarfs, but I think either bringing a lot of them or having them fight inside other units so that they don't die so quickly because they have terrible melee defense, that can really help them out. But if we get rid of those 2 Arab boys, that frees us up with just enough money to bring what I think would be more useful here, some Stone Trolls. Because obviously they're armor piercing, they hit hard, but more importantly, they're better at killing characters and can actually just deal with everything the dwarves have. They can beat up infantry, they can beat and chase off missile units, they can beat up characters. The only thing they need to really watch out for is Dragonback Slayers, or Slayers in general. The Dragonback ones, though, have fire damage, which of course the trolls are weak to with their regeneration. But I think they could have been a much more useful pick there than those Arab boys, because you still have plenty of missile power. You still got the Rusty Arrows, the Mangy Marauders, you still got the Gaze of Mork, so if there are gyrocopters, you can still do something about them. Maybe if there were 3 units of gyrocopters, it might be a little bit tougher, but those Stone Trolls still, I feel, could have been a good call here. But I think that's the only major change I'd make to this army. But if we go for a different approach, perhaps we can try something a little bit different. Let's say, okay, we're going to get rid of the Orc Boys. We're going to go less infantry. We're going to use those Gobbos up front. Instead of flanking around, they're going to be the protection for the Black Orcs. So we're just going to put those out front, and Black Orcs will be behind, trying to do the same as what Tuffle did. You can use their Fanatics as well, and the Poison can help out, bringing down their damage output. That'll help the Black Orcs a little bit as well. And we're going to hold on to the Squigs, and we're going to give them some buddies to travel with. So we're going to go for a big Cav flanking party. Either Boar Boys or Squig Hoppers, both can be good. They're both armor piercing, both pretty hard hitting. And if you mix them in with a couple of Squigs, they can all help each other out and thus keep each other safe and fighting for a little bit longer. And thus you can have a nice heavy flanking party for just ramming the backs of dwarves, because dwarves don't like being flanked. So you could bring either of those cavalry Squig Hoppers. They got the bonus versus infantry. The Poison as well. Again, maybe that Poison could be useful here, reducing Dawi damage output. Not that they have great damage output on their infantry generally. Or maybe we could go super punchy, bring another unit of Trolls and just try and break through their front line fast and get after stuff. We still want to put some flanking in with the Squigs, but that could be an option. I think I'd go with Boar Boys, and I'd try something like that. Pretty much the same as what Tuffle did, just bringing that cav around the flanks and going and relying less on the infantry and more on the flanking power and the hammer and anvil with those Boar Boys as much as possible. Perhaps though, if you were really worried about maybe gyrocopters, you could bring Azag. Because he is flying, he could chase and melee those gyrocopters to death. Of course, like I said, the spells, you would have to be quite selective. A lot of these magic ones aren't that useful because of the dwarf magic resistance, so Spirit Leech, Fate of Yuna, not that great. Soul Blight, maybe Doom and Darkness could be useful, but Azag actually has some really nice items for this fight. You can give your units armor and melee defense, that can help them fight a lot better. Give that to those Black Orcs, hang around with the Black Orcs. Same with Slagger Slashers, extra melee attack could be useful, beefing up those Black Orcs even more. But there we go, just a few ideas of a couple of different approaches you could take to fighting the dwarves as the Greenskins. I hope you've enjoyed this, thanks for watching. If you want to send me one of these, DM it to me in Discord is the easiest way, and I'll take a look. Thanks for watching, see you in the future.